when I was talking to you about walking into the opening of your latest store, Maison 69 in Garden 8, I remember stepping in, obviously goosebumps everywhere because I thought I was coming to just take a look at the store opening that I had my pieces in and I felt great about and all that stuff. But really, genuinely, when you're standing in the middle of that space, and anyone that hasn't gone needs to go, 100%, you feel like you're standing in the middle of a revolutionary moment in time where something is shifting. You're not just walking into a store, you're going into
Big words.
no, but it's true. Really, it's true because it's not something that any one of your senses alone will understand, but it is a culmination and an accumulation of all of your senses combined that can comprehend what you're standing in the middle of. And when we were talking earlier, you were telling me, I was saying it felt like you're creating an experience, and you were telling me the word experience wasn't even in the formula. And it's so interesting because how can that be? What was there that you were trying to create when you were coming up with this vision of what this space can be? And I'm not going to call it a store, it's a beautiful space.
I need to take all that in for a moment. Uh, honestly, I think we all try to convey something in what we do. And I always wanted to create a meaning for what I do. It's an industry, if you call it retail, if you call it marketing, if you call it fashion, it's very elusive industries. It can be very shallow. It can be perceived as the list of what matters to people in the scale of 100. And I think I was lucky at a certain point in life, I realized I want to create meaning to that. But when you're young, you don't know what is even meaning. You don't even who are you? You don't know. You don't know. And the intention started, I think, maybe 7 years ago, is when we do something, how can we create meaning? And we realized the only meaning you can deliver is through two things. One, through the people who are going to create it with you, how that can impact them. And second, the receiver, the people coming in, how they're going to feel. What is the takeaway? I know they're coming to space to buy a product, but what's more than that? What more can we do that people can feel something for themselves? And the most important, it's not a constant feeling. Some people will feel stimulated. Some people will feel nice. Some people will feel engaged. Some people will come again, bringing their loved ones to show them what they've experienced.
That's what I did. That's what I did.
And I think within that sense, storytelling of a space became the center of what we do. Yeah. Doing some research, looking into the sense of things, we learned history through storytelling. Yeah. We learned emotions through storytelling. And we wanted the space to tell a story. That's basically how we start doing it. We said, what is a home? So when we started 7 years ago, and that's honestly a fascinating part, how the mind evolved. Yeah. When we started 7 years ago by doing the first Maison 69, when we rebranded ourselves from 69 to Maison 69, by creating the big spaces, for us it was, I wouldn't say theoretical, but more like a kid's mind. What's a home? A home is a garden. A home is a living room. A home is a bedroom. So we designed the store 7 years ago when we opened in Zamalek with that sense. But we couldn't create more depth to the thought. Yeah. Because most probably at that time, that's who I was as well.
Yeah, because
everything was literal.
Exactly. Yeah.
Everything was literal.
Yeah.
But when we evolved through those 6 years, yeah, and we did in the middle Villa Babushka with the same sense, it is a house of grandmother, we went a bit deeper. We didn't make it as, what is the house of the grandmother? We said, what is the emotions that connect a grandmother to her granddaughter?
Amazing. I didn't know that.
So the space was designed to reflect these years from the age of 2 to 5. What is the relationship between the kid and the grandmother? It's about play. It's the reward system. It is the love of giving. And then from 5 till 9, that change. The kids start to understand things. So she would tell her, this is the carpet I will give to you. This is the plates that I will leave to you. This is the chandelier I would like to take in your home. This is my art collection that I will share with you.
And you had designed each of part of the story in that way?
To reflect that.
Amazing.
So it was our second generation of getting deeper in the sense. By the time we landed at Maison 69, the new one, we realized it cannot be any more that literal. It has to have more depth to the thought. It's not about the living room. It's about what is the emotion that happens in the living room. Bringing an artist as Karim Al-Hayawan to be part of telling the story of what's a living room. So we collaborated on the idea of the TV. Why TV matters. Yeah. You know, in the 70s in Egypt, there was one TV channel. The family would gather around that channel. And then there became two channels. People start to fight. And today, people have iPhones, iPads, but still we need the TV not to watch it. So it can bring us together. And that's the narrative he expressed in his art installation.
It's amazing.
And that's you'll find in everywhere around the space.
Yeah.
We try to create meaning for everything. And I believe that's what people feel. They feel the 432 workers who worked in that space with full intention because we respected everyone, telling them why we're doing it, why we're trying to do. And honestly, I think the biggest reward to me in that process is when a 5-year-old kid walk in that space. And you know, in his memory, that's the benchmark of what he understands, what he should deserve. And indirectly, that will elevate the benchmark of the cultural reference, at least of the category of stores. And that's what elevate the benchmark of everything. 100%. When people start to know they deserve better by knowing, seeing, touching something they have not seen before.
That's what I love about the store, actually, because or the space. Like when you walk in, you feel like you didn't just design a space that people were gonna like and understand. You designed the future of what it should be, like the thing that people should aspire, evolve to. And it wasn't just a thing, because a lot of times, you know, I think designers or like, you know, people that kind of create these kinds of concepts, they do something where they kind of feel like, are people going to get what I'm going to do? Are people going to understand? Maybe I shouldn't do it like that. They won't really get it. And with you, I didn't feel like, and this is what I felt. Tell me, correct me if I'm wrong. You didn't do that. Like you just dreamed and you created this incredible vision that you thought was there. And then really everyone that walked in, they got it. You didn't dumb it down for people. You created a space that you knew everybody could evolve and elevate to and understand eventually every single corner of it. And when you walk in, there's always something new that you're seeing. Like you never walk in and say, oh, I've seen everything, ever.
You know, it's funny because I wish I am that sophisticated in my mind.
No, but you are.
I am not. My biggest gift is the naivety of the thought. Really. My biggest gift is the kid's mind. We approach everything as a kid's mind. So in reality, I didn't go to the future. I went to the past. I went to the basic sense of things. Really.
I see that actually.
You know, we went, we didn't want to integrate any technology in the space. We didn't want to integrate any big LED screens in the space. We wanted to keep things as the very, very basic minimal of what you navigate. And through that, we created it. I don't think we designed anything, honestly. We just put things together, and we brought amazing people who believed in what we wanted to achieve. When an artist comes and we ask her to create a wall that took 10 months of work, that she did not even charge a penny for it. I don't know what do you call that, honestly.
That's amazing.
Every artist who joined the process, we had 14 artists in the space, no one charged us a penny.
You're joking.
We told them, we don't have the money to pay you. but we want to put the money in the execution of what you're going to create. But we're going to pay the workers. And everyone agreed to the thought. And I think that's all what brings a feeling to the space.
But that's what I'm talking about. Like, I'm sure all of these artists felt like, because I think I would feel like this, like, I want to be part of this revolutionary thing that's taking place. This thing that is unlike anything I've ever seen anywhere in the world. And I'm not going to say just for Egypt, but truly anywhere in the world. And I know, like, I think as well, when you see someone who is a visionary with a vision, and who's working with his whole heart, because you are really just one big heart and soul. You're really just a walking big heart. You're saying, I believe in this person. I believe in this person blindly, and I'm with him. Let's do this. Let's create this vision. Let's see this come to life. And I think as well for artists, the joy really comes from seeing their pieces in these spaces and seeing the way other people take a look at their pieces.
You're 100% right. And I will just add to that piece. The best part, they didn't know what we're creating.
That's amazing.
They just believed really in our narrative. We don't do any renderings to what we do. We really don't. So nothing. We had nothing to show to anyone. We had nothing to show to ourselves.
You don't get, I mean, maybe not now, but you don't get nervous doing that?
No.
In general?
No. Not for a second.
You've never gotten nervous doing that?
I wouldn't say nervous. I get concerned.
Okay.
I get stressed if it's not coming to what we envision. Because me and my team, all what we do is we envision. So the first thing, we want to make sure that all of us see the same thing. Okay. That is not there.
Yeah, how do you, so I was going to say, like, how do you do
Basically.
that, you know? Like, how do you sit there with your team to talk about a vision and then feel like you're all aligned on it without visually actually looking at something tangible, holding something in your hand, or seeing something?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. That's why I said it's not design. Because I respect designers. I know what architects do. Yeah. And I'm far away from that intelligent process. Yeah. Our process is the beautiful imperfect. We love when it doesn't come out as perfect. We enjoy that. That's why we don't create the rendering. We create the technical drawings because we want to make sure that the measurements are right, it's going to work, and all of that. Yeah. But that night before we opened, it was the first time for all of us to see it.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Because you're adding. You know, every day we're adding things, we're adding elements, we're adding things. And the more you add, something happens.
What happened in that moment when you guys kind of saw it all coming together? I just got goosebumps as you said that.
We cried. We cried. Not because it's amazing and fantastic, because it is what we saw in our minds came to life. And I believe if you do that with full truth and authenticity, people feel that. And that's what I say. We don't create the most amazing things. We don't create the most beautiful things. But for sure, we do something very honest.
Absolutely. My mother always said to me growing up, whatever comes from the heart goes straight to the heart, always.
People feel it. People feel it. And if I tell you, I think a couple of days before we opened the store, we really ran out of money. We ran out of money. But still, we went to the very, very detail of everything we wanted to do. Even credit cards were used. Seriously. Yeah. Because we wanted to make it happen. Like, even internally we're saying, خلاص كفاية, enough. It looks good. But it's not really what we had in our mind yet. So we still go that extra bit. So that's why big respect to all the designers, big respect to all the architects, because they come with education and discipline that I don't have. Maybe I have the education, but I don't have the discipline.
To get these things done properly.
Yeah. So I don't think what we do can be called design. I think it's a freedom of a thought. And I think that's our biggest gift. We're a group of free people who we decide to do what we want to do. And I learned something actually since I moved to New York, which was very interesting. We can have a very big idea. That idea stays as an idea. No one else knows anything about it. Till one person see you and can see your idea. If that person can see what you see, that's the first moment of making it a reality. And it takes a third person to come and say, oh, I understand what you guys mean. Then it's at the beginning of making it really coming to life. But as long as it still stays an idea in your head, it doesn't exist. It takes one person to say, I see you. I know what you want. I know what you mean.
So then it becomes in our ability to translate.
To convey your thought. So as much as how big the idea is and how important the idea, it's as equal, how can you communicate it? Because if you don't, then that person doesn't believe in it. Then nothing, which is exactly, and I always like to give the credit to, honestly, Masr Italia in that process. They are the developer who believed in the idea. So the minute they believed in it, it gave us the space to start create and imagine. If they didn't believe, all these ideas would have stayed in our heads. And I always communicate that when we have a conversation or a lecture or in a conference. I say, great ideas are very important, but what's more important, are you capable of communicating that idea to someone to believe in it? And then a third person to make it happen. Otherwise,
It's just inside of you, and that's where it will stay, essentially.
which means it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
In my mind.
No, but that's very true, because if it's only inside of you and you can't get it out, it will always just stay there, and it will never materialize or come to life or be able to be created into anything outside of who you are. It will always just be within you.
You know, and I think that was the turning point in my mind, in my child's mind. As a child, you dream and you think it's real.
It's very true.
And I stayed with that thought. The only thing as an adult I realized, but I want that dream becomes really physical and real. And I think that's our gift as well as a team. We can make that elusive imagination a reality.
I want to take you back to what you were saying earlier to me. We were kind of chatting in the background when you were saying when you were 20 and you started your own store, because I feel like when you're 20, one, to start your own store just seems like the most impossible thing to do. Two, how did you go from, like, why did you go from being an architect to deciding I want to start my own store? And then there's another question that's going to be a follow-up on it because of this, because this child,
I'm going to write that.
this childlike innocence thing, I think, is so it's just who you are. Like, anyone that will meet you will just know that about who you are. And then how did you preserve that through all the different stages of your life? So let's start with the first thing first. So you started a store when you were 20. Like, how did you do that? And this was in Egypt, but you were in London at the time, and then you moved here. What made you move back?
I think when you're young, you don't know better. You just do what you want to do. Like all these thoughts I didn't have. I didn't have that mind of analyzing and saying, do I want to stay here? Do I want to go there? It was very simple to me. I studied engineering, architecture, and I didn't like it. So in my summer holidays, I started working in retail stores in London. And through retail stores, I started to learn something, and it stimulated me. The stimulation for me was how to bring a product, and when you put it under the right lighting, under the right shelf, under the right space, it becomes of value to people. Especially my first job was in the warehouse of the retail store. As a kid, when you're 17 and you go get a job, my first job was in Benetton in London. And I remember it was the store in Oxford Street next to Debenhams. Really, genuinely. And when I went to apply for the job as an internship, they said, sure, but the first 2 weeks you work in the warehouse. I said, I want to be in the store. They said, you need to learn what you're going to sell. So spending 2 weeks in that warehouse, I saw these garments coming out of boxes in a dark room.
What did
Nothing
you do?
fancy.
What was like your thing every single day that you got up to do at the warehouse?
You receive deliveries every day. You open these boxes, you put them, you start stacking them on the shelves, you start learning the code of everything, you start printing codes on everything. And through that you learn so in 2 weeks' time when I went to the store, suddenly that stupid sweatshirt in a plastic bag became a fancy sweatshirt and a nice hanger under the lighting in the store, with the music in the store, with salespeople putting these sweatshirts on or whatever garments, and people come and buy into that world. And we was like, wow, that's the same sweatshirt that was in the dark warehouse room, and I was trying to learn how to fold it inside that. Yeah, and I think that was the beginning of me realizing that's what I want to do. And I used to come back to Cairo, and all my friends at that time would say, can you buy this for us? Can you bring this for us? And I was like, there is something there. And I started actually before opening the store, I would bring things and sell them from my home.
What year was that?
97, 96.
That was the time where we still didn't have.
Nothing.
Yeah.
There was nothing much around.
So you were the guy.
There was actually no. I would to give the credit. No, there was nice stores around, but they would sell things for the whole family, for the mother and the daughter and the father. You know, like they were family stores. I think the power as well of being young, you do things in a young way. So when you're 20, all your friends are 20.
It's true. It's true.
So that's what you know.
Yeah.
So the store became a very strong voice for young culture and young people. Of course, me saying these big words now, I didn't even know them then. All what I knew, my friends from the club and my neighbors would come and they buy from me. And that's how it started.
So you had a store, and basically it was just you would get stuff from the US and you would bring it back.
From the UK.
From the UK, and you would bring it back and you would sell it inside the space.
Yeah.
And it was young and it was hip and you were 20 and that was the thing that was happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know, actually, maybe it's story, I don't know if it's relevant or not, but my memory brings it a lot nowadays when I talk about that time. I think it's the drive that's very important in doing anything. Knowledge is not important. Drive is more important, because drive will create the knowledge, will seek the knowledge. But if you have the knowledge and you don't have the drive, and the reason why, I had very little money to do that store, but I wanted to make it look like the cool stores in London. So I went, I was looking at the stores that they were doing interiors, like new stores didn't open yet in London. I was walking on King's Road and I saw a store, they were doing the finishes of the wall. And it was the kind of the wall I wanted to do in the store, which looked like random wash wall. At that time, it was the big thing. And I went inside to the painter. I told him, where did you buy that paint? He said, we bought that paint from John Lewis. I said, but how do you do it? How does it look that way? He said, you get it and you add 5 times water to that. Do you want me to show you? I said, yes, please.
You're kidding.
He said, buy me lunch, meet me at the lunch hour, buy me lunch, and I'll show you. I met him at the lunch hour. He showed me how to do it. He went with me to John Lewis and showed me. I picked the colors I wanted, but he specified the material and I bought it. And that's how I did the first store. And I always share that story for a simple reason. Ask. There's always someone will say something. And the drive. And that's how things happened.
I think it's such an important lesson to learn, though, because for me, I don't know what it is for whatever reason. I was always, in my 20s specifically, I was always scared to ask because I was afraid of being rejected. I was afraid someone's going to say no to me. And then I got to a point where I realized, so what? Like, what if they say yes? Like, you're missing out on the possibility that someone actually will say yes and help educate you or give you that opportunity because you're too scared of that feeling of rejection.
Funny, I think when we get older, we're more scared of the rejection. So that becomes less.
That's true, but it's something I've actively tried to work around.
I think for me, it worked the other way around. When I was young, I would ask the world, how'd you do this? I think growing up, I became more, the fear of rejection becomes higher.
Why do you think it becomes higher?
Vulnerability becomes less. Vulnerability becomes less. The beauty of a kid is the vulnerability and the ignorance and not knowing.
But I think as well with this idea of vulnerability, because I realized with me at least, I'm afraid, or I was afraid, I'm not anymore, of being vulnerable, because in my moment of vulnerability, I used to think how the person I'm being vulnerable with reacts to me will affect something about me. And then I think for me, there was a light bulb moment where I realized that I'm going to decide to be vulnerable with this person and be honest and share whatever. How that person chooses to react to me, that's about them. That has nothing to do with me. And I need to learn.
Very sophisticated thought.
No, but it's true. But it's very true. And it's like after I learned to do that a lot of times, that eventually just became my norm. And then I realized like when someone takes something I've said in a vulnerable moment and turns it against me, uses it against me, or whatever. And then I know very clearly that that's about them. That's not about me. And being vulnerable is the thing that I think really truly empowers us. It is a superpower to be able to be vulnerable in that way without the fear of what someone will do with it. Well, I realized, at least for me, it became the strongest I've ever been in my entire life. Because for me, I mean, because I was bullied through a lot of my school years, and I was scared a lot of the time. I used to be very scared of people, actually, for a very, very long time. And when I worked through a lot of that, I realized that people are not that scary, and I'm also human. And the thing that connects us is that we're human. And this, like, my ability to be vulnerable with someone, share how I feel, share how a situation made me feel, actually is my own superpower, because how they choose to take that and do whatever they want with it, that's about something that they're going through. That's about their own thing. And it can't taint and it can't change and it can't take away from my decision to decide to be vulnerable. Does that resonate with you?
I think evolving through time, in my mind, I realize vulnerability is the biggest gift we can have. The challenge as humans, we still seek validation. So, how far can you go with your vulnerability? So, how far you're willing to be validated or not?
I think it's an ongoing process, don't you think?
It is, but
Yeah.
it depends at what stage in your life, in what context
Yes,
you are,
that's true.
and I think that's part of who we are. I'm always fascinated with what people do with themselves and with others, because within that context, vulnerability is key,
That's true.
and communication is king.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, absolutely.
So, and that's in a way why I love retail, because retail deliver all of that. That moment when a guy or a girl pick a dress or a jacket to try them on, that moment is the optimum of vulnerability, because them in the mirror, they see everything. There's nobody else in the middle.
Yeah, it's just you.
And the minute they leave that changing room, they want the validation of everyone.
That is a very interesting way of looking at it. I've never
It's the
thought about it in
truth.
that way.
It's the truth. Today, coming here in the morning, I thought, what am I going to wear? Because in a way, I want your validation. And I want the validation of the people looking at me now. And I said, since when I do that? I don't do that. So I just put my all black.
And that's not who I am. I think I also go through that quite often, where you do go through situations where you're constantly, not constantly, but you'll go through moments of that. And I think it's very important to learn to catch yourself as you're doing it. And that's something I learned later on in life. Obviously, in my 20s, I was ridden by because for me, it was like anxiety about people. What are people going to think, and validation. And then as you grow up, you start to do that, where you're like, no, like I know who I am for the most part. I'm figuring out who I am. and I'm comfortable in my own skin. And I am who I am, and that's what it is. Like at the end of the day, I need to show up as me every single day, regardless of who that person is in that day.
Deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Without having to worry about external validation, external opinions, because you'll always have the external opinions. You'll never not have opinions from people. And I think a lot of us as well, like when we're dealing with other people, when we have thoughts about other people, when we have opinions, they're always sometimes a mirror of something that's going on inside of us that we need to look into, or it's kind of coming out of our own insecurities. Like I realize when you're really focusing on yourself, there's very little time to focus on the people around you. It's mostly just you thinking about you. And so it's really interesting that you say that, like, this realization that the minute people come and they look into the mirror, they're the most vulnerable space that they're ever.
Because you see everything. You see everything, and it's your voice within you evaluating what you're looking at. But the minute you leave the door, you want everyone else to validate whatever you're wearing or whatever you want to put out there.
That's really interesting. So what is it about that moment that makes you feel so inspired to be part of it?
A human story. A human story. And people behave in so many different ways to convey so many different things. You would see the very open people who are coming to enjoy the world of things, whether to buy something or not. And you see the people who are coming very focused to buy. And you see the people who are coming as friends or as couples to enjoy something together. And that honestly was one of the key things in that new space. Was it shouldn't be only about a product. It should be about space that maybe people can come and spend time. They maybe can work, we can have a bite, maybe read a book, maybe just be there for a while. And that, I think, was the most challenging part of the dynamics, that we created something we have not seen before. Really. Like we did not mimic a store we've seen somewhere.
No, of course. I've never seen this anywhere in the world. Yeah.
And I don't think because we are genius. No. It's because we did not look at retail stores to create that space. We only looked at spaces that bring people together and allow them to spend some time there. We said garments or products or fashion, we know how to do that. Let's bring the extra element and extra component and how each part of them can function. Because you have a restaurant that needs to function on its own. You have a bakery that needs to exist on its own. And you have a bookshop that needs to have a business as well. And you have a design store and you have sofas to sell. And how do you bring all those components together? And how people can relate. You can bring whatever you want together, but how people react is everything. And I think that's what the magic of our creators gave us in that space. It's not us. There's a higher force that wanted that place to happen because of the good intentions that's coming with it. And that's what people saw. Because I walk and I see people just studying. And I'm down,
true.
There's 3 girls buying their party dress. And it's totally different conversation that's happening on the people sitting in front of computers up there. And there's a couple of the kids who are working as internship in Bascota having a side conversation. So there's a lot going on. And within that, the most important, it function because it's a business by the end of the day. And we learned that the hard way. Creativity feeds money and money feeds creativity. You cannot separate them because you can have the biggest idea. No one believes in it. No one shows it. It stays an idea. Someone believes in it. Someone finances it. Comes to life. Makes money. It goes back again. And that's how the cycle works. One needs to feed the other. That's why I always say, when people say, oh my God, you guys are very creative. I say, I've met the real creatives. They usually don't care about the money.
That's true.
Real artists, they
Yeah.
really create.
Yeah.
But for us, we learn that's not enough.
Yeah. How did you learn the hard way? Did something happen?
In 2007, 2006, we opened a store called Friction in Zamalek. Friction was the beginning of me getting exposed to the idea, let's create something beyond store. And we created this very cool space in Zamalek. It was like inspired by the warehouses of New York. And we imagined imaginary characters living in it, an artist and a photographer. And we designed the space according, but the whole idea, it was the beginning at that time, the beginning of people becoming a bit more eclectic.
Okay. When you say we in 2007, how
Yes.
many people were you?
The power of what I was able to create, I don't think is the business, but
Yeah.
it's the people who built that company with me.
You had people at the time that were working with you.
When I started working in that industry, I always wanted to hire people I can talk to. So I started hiring my friends at the age of 20, and they were the people around me. So I was very lucky from the beginning to get people around me who get interested in retail as well. So tons of people worked with us, but I was very lucky because there was 3 key people who decided to stay with me for the long run. And they actually are the ones who grew the company. I moved to New York 11 years ago, and the company actually grew in a profound way over the last 6-7 years. So it didn't happen because I did it. It happened because we did it. So in my heart, it is the we collective I always relate to.
No, I'm just asking because, you know, like in the early years when you're first starting the ideas and concepts, it's always like you and maybe one other person, you know? And like I remember like for me when I was starting, it was like me and one other person. I would always use the word like my team and we and the board. And it was like just throwing it there. And I was the driver and I was the person that was ironing and I was doing everything. But it always felt like at the beginning, I didn't have the means or the resources to hire all these different people. And so I would always say these things until eventually it became a we. That's why I'm just asking.
Actually, on that story, I'll come back because I want to share something about that specific one. But anyway, 2007, we created this very cool store where you can buy a ripped T-shirt and next to it a very luxury dress. Like it was really the beginning of the era of eclectic style.
And that wasn't there in Egypt at the time, I don't think.
And even in Europe, it was still new, that very high eclectic mix in retail. People were doing that on their own, but retail did not reflect that. Like people would go and buy that T-shirt from that place and that pants from the other one. And I was inspired by that idea, and I said, let's create a platform. And this is the first store that CNN came and did a report on.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. And they said, how come this is Egypt now? This is Cairo. And after that interview, I thought I'm going to be Bill Gates of the retail. Like, I'm killing it.
CNN got this.
2
so I'm
years
done.
later, we closed that store.
No. Really?
Yeah.
Why? What happened?
It took one client to say one thing that solved the mystery to me. She said, Amir, listen, people who wants to buy that luxury dress, they're not going to buy it from that environment. And the girl who's going to buy that ripped T-shirt, when she comes here, she's not going to buy that dress. So you want to bring 2 different clients to your space, most probably both of them are not coming. Because when I tell my daughter, let's go to Friction, she tells me, oh, mom, it's very expensive. And when I tell her, when she tells me, let's go and buy the dress that you liked, I say, no, let's go to the other store. They have more variety of such a dress. So that day I realized why we're not doing well. And that was the first moment to learn, you know what, make sure when you do a new idea, it happens at the right time where people are ready. You can have the greatest ideas on the universe, but it goes on top of people's heads because it's not the right time. And I think that's what we're lucky to learn and to understand when we rebranded 69 to be Maison 69 in 2015 and 2016. It felt now it was the right time. I don't think if we created Maison 69 now, 10 years ago, it would have clicked. And that was, we learned at that time. But to go back to the idea of the one, when I started my company in New York City, I remember very well, I had actually nobody working with me. I was the only one.
So you packed up and you left from here to go to New York.
Yeah.
After having your own stores, and you started from scratch?
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to be, I felt I can do more with myself. I didn't feel having retail stores and sitting around the retail stores was fulfilling anymore to me. And I didn't just pack. I worked with a company there on, they were working on a pitch, and I was working with them on that pitch.
You got hired from here to go to there, or were you kind of
I
just
was in New York. A friend introduced me to a friend. They had an agency. They said, work with us on that pitch. I worked with them on the pitch. They won the pitch. The client contract said the same people who did the pitch has been the same people delivering the work the first year. And I remember that very well. They called me. They said, Amir, good news, bad news. Good news, we won the pitch. Bad news, you have to move to New York. I said, what do you mean I have to move to New York? No, I honestly, at that time, I knew I wanted something more, but I didn't know where and how. That's why I was engaging with different people, doing different things.
Yeah. And you were, where were you living at the time? In Egypt?
Cairo.
Oh, okay.
So I went we had an agreement, I'll go for 3 weeks to attend the early meetings so the client can see me. And I went and I never left.
You're kidding.
And the reason why I never left, because I realized I don't know anything. I realized I didn't know anything. Obviously, I knew something, but I didn't know anything to be part of that world. And every other day, I felt smaller and smaller and smaller. Till I realized I'm not going to leave, because it became, I think I know better than that. I think I have something to offer. But obviously, with New York standards, I had nothing to offer. Or I did, but I didn't know how to convey it. I didn't know how to communicate it. And I got caught with myself. I became very angry. And I started pointing fingers at everyone working around me. You don't know. But in my heart, I knew I was the one who didn't know. And I didn't want to leave till I cracked that code. And I stayed with them for a year. And the day I won the second pitch with them is the day I left that company.
You're joking.
Yes.
Why did you leave?
Because I realized I cannot work in an environment full of fear. And agencies in New York City, not just New York City, in many cultures and many cities, businesses can function under fear, especially if it's a client and an agency relationship. So if the client is not happy, they might walk out. And if they walk out, that actually might kill that agency because it was their biggest client. And I couldn't function under that fear. So let alone, I was in my optimum of insecurity, and they were a group of scared people. Put this together, you have a recipe for a disaster.
Absolutely.
So the day I won the second pitch, I just want to tell myself, I can do it. I'm not as bad as I thought. And the minute I left, I decided to create my own. And I didn't want to be in advertising. I didn't want to be in marketing. I want about creating brands and concepts for other clients.
How old were you at the time?
I was 35. Yeah. Anyway, fast forward, the big story, I had a Japanese client, a consultant, who came to me. He said, I was working in a big office space that actually looked good. So any client would walk in would feel like,
this is in New York.
I'm the deal.
Okay.
Yeah. But at that time, I was the only one in that company.
Okay.
There was nobody else.
Really?
Yeah.
Amazing.
I just started the company 3 months, and I met that consultant. He said, what do you do? I said, I do concept. He said, can you do a concept for a hotel? I said, sure.
Of course.
Of course, because they teach in New York, fake it till you make it.
Of course. I live by that.
I said, I can do it. The client came, a Japanese client. We had a meeting. It was a meeting room, a glass room in the middle of the whole building. And you can see a lot of people outside. So we're sitting in the room, and the guy said, I showed him what I do. He said, impressive, blah, blah, blah. He said, how big is your team? And for a reason, I said 27. As if 27 sounded like the number that would make me legit. He said, small company. I said, yeah.
And you're the only one
I'm the only one. I said, we're a small team, but we like to make it a boutique service, blah, blah, blah. He said, great. I would like to meet them. Since I'm here, because he's in the office.
Oh my God.
I said, part of us are in the meetings outside, and in that moment, the survival, I swear, is the survival in every human. I scanned that whole space outside quickly, and I identified a friend of mine who I know if I go to her, walking her, she will not collapse.
Yeah.
Like she will understand the game.
She'll figure it out, yeah.
So I started sitting with a group of people, of 9 people that I don't know, in a meeting, but they're in an open space. So I said, please join me. And we left that room, And we walked all the way to her. I said, I introduced his name to her name, and the typical Japanese, he said hello, and he started saying hello to everyone around the table. And it's New York City. Everyone is open, and everyone will say hello. By the time they finished that round of introduction, and my heart was like, God, please, please, save me. And the guy by the last one, I said, please, let me show you the door. It was lovely to have you here and to meet everyone. And I walked with the guy to the door.
You're kidding. Oh my God, Amir.
So we all do it. I think you did it having one person saying we, at least there was somebody else.
I can't.
I said 27 and I had nobody.
And you got the pitch? You got the client? Amazing. And you saw it through to the end, and he.
And you know, it's funny how, as humans, we function. At that time, I had nothing. And I say I have 27 people. Today, I have big list of clients. And my team, literally, were only 6 people. Really? But today, I say it with pride. I say it with confidence. And the client who's seeking the bigger agency, good luck. But, you know, it's funny how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. Because also when you're younger, you're also trying so hard to prove things, and you're still figuring it out, and you don't really have
Gina,
a formula.
prove what? I'm not even there. There was nothing even to prove. I was just trying to have a client.
I just need money.
Yeah, I just needed someone to say, I'll pay you for what you're going to say.
And did he ever find out that you didn't have a team of 27?
I think in his heart he did, because we worked with them for like 4 months. And through that 4 months, he never met anyone.
It's just you.
But he was in LA, so it was good.
Yeah.
You know, but every time I fly, it's just me.
Yeah.
He didn't ask. We delivered. At that time, I delivered. But I think in his heart, he knew.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
How long did he stay with you as a client? Just 4 months?
4 months,
And
yeah.
he did work with you again? Well, it was just a one-time project and that was
No,
it.
it was one. It's a Japanese company. They were opening the first store in the US, and they were just testing it over time and stuff. No, we didn't get
It's so interesting because I
unless they found out and he didn't tell me, and that's why he never hired me again. Maybe.
It's so interesting because, like, really, like, when you're a lot younger, you think you need, or at least this was the truth for me, I thought I needed a lot of resources in order to get things going and for things to work. And then as I've grown, I've realized you don't need a lot of resources. You just need the right formula of human beings in small quantities who can get it done in the way that you know how, have that same shared vision, work with their whole heart in the way that you do. And it's not about how much money that you have. Obviously, money helps, but it's not about just having a lot of resources. It's about having the right formula of the resources to be able to get it done. Like you're saying now, with everything that you've created, your team is 6 people. Anyone that's much younger would be like, yeah, there's no way that could happen with just 6 people. But because as well, you're telling me that you also have the right people that work with you. And a lot of them is the team that does this.
For sure. And it's what you bring as well to the table. Like, people have the ability to make you feel very small or very big. You know, some of my clients, big corporate America companies, they would maybe sometimes make you feel small because they want to feel safe. And for them, safe does not come from the small.
That's very true.
And you know, it's tricky. How did you make them feel safe through another angle of what they're looking at? Because maybe someone else is pitching the business, company that has 80 people on their side. And sometimes you meet the big client who's interested to work with the small one. Yeah. And that goes again to vulnerability. Yeah. When you put yourself out there and you put your truth out there, again, you allow people to give an opinion about who you are and what you do and how far they like that or they don't like that.
Yeah. Do you feel like with some of your clients, it's challenging to strike the balance between staying true to who you are and showing that side of you that is vulnerable, and then playing the part that you have to play to just get the business moving and all of that? Because I think a lot of the times when you're starting your own business or you're in the creative industry or any of that, it's really difficult to strike a balance between when do I know when to just stay true to who I am and when do I know when to just play the part and do the thing that's going to get the work going.
I don't want to sound idealistic, but honestly, I've never done it. I can't do it.
How did you know
I need to be very truthful because I think my power in being an agency on the agency side, that I'm not really an agency side, I'm an entrepreneur myself. So every time I work with a client who's trying to build a company or trying to build a brand, whatever, in my mind, I became that person. I, not I became, I become that person for that second, as if I own it. And from that place, I function. Because remember, I didn't learn anything of what I do. I didn't study anything of what I do.
You didn't.
No. So everything I've done all my life, it's I learn it as I go.
You're self-taught. You're a husband.
So within that, it's the only thing I know is to offer the truth of how to do something.
Yeah.
I don't know the other way. So within that, I cannot try to convince people, or I cannot wear a suit that's not mine in that context.
You never went through any phases where you weren't sure about that? Because like, for example, let me share something with you. Like when I was in my 20s, I think, so I've always just been a very kind of open person, hysterical, all over the place. And then I think like me being in I think I identified myself in the fashion industry. And for me, I always felt like I didn't fit the mold of what the fashion industry was supposed to be. And then at one point in my 20s, I thought, okay, do I need to kind of conform? Do I need to do the thing? Why is my work not working the way that I want it to work? Because I'm not part of this clique, or I'm not part of this thing, or do I just have to play the part? And then I think I tried to do it for like 5.5 seconds. It made me horribly miserable just because it wasn't who I am. It's just not me. Not that there's anything wrong per se with the fashion industry. It's just not who I am. I'm not being true to who I am. And the minute that I came to terms with that and made the decision that like I'm just gonna go in and always check in with myself, what it is I need to be doing, and that's gonna be my answer every single time. I'm gonna stay true to who I am, sit comfortably in this person that I am. And the minute that I did that, everything kind of shifted for me. So is there a moment where you felt any pressure of having to do that, or you questioned who it is you were, or did you always just know internally that this is who you are and you were comfortable with it?
I think you're lucky because you had a sophisticated thought. I didn't.
Okay.
I couldn't go that far with my thoughts at that time. No, it's funny. When I moved to New York, I wanted to speak like everyone in the industry. So during talking about vulnerability, during lunch hours, I would see interesting groups of people who I can sense they're discussing a business idea or something. Because in my office environment in New York, people are all in creative industries, all about creating new things, new business ideas, new tech apps, all this. So what I would do, I would go and sit next to them to listen what they say and how humiliating that process was for me in certain days, because it felt so small that I need to go and sit to listen to what people say, so I learn their words or I learn how they say things. And it's New York. Everyone is an alpha type in their own way, and I would go and sit and listen. Funny enough, 3 years later, my business coach told me one time, said, Amir, I want you to go and ask your clients, why did they hire you? I said, why do you want me to do that? He said, it's important to know. What value did they see in you? Believe it or not, the 3 things my clients told me were the 3 things I was hiding the most.
What were they?
The first one, I always wanted to pretend I come from the branding and the business development industry in New York City. So I was trying to mimic the words.
Talk the lingo.
And they all said, you know what? We always liked that you said things totally different than everyone else. So the fact I didn't know how to say it is the value they liked me for. Me not realizing, I just didn't know better. It's just,
Yeah.
but that's what they liked. And I was always trying to be somebody else, mimic the other words. 2, I always did hide from my clients that I'm an entrepreneur. I never said I have another business in Egypt.
Really?
Never. I never wanted to say that. Because I don't want to disrupt the conversation. I want to confirm I am the deal.
Yeah. I'm here with you 100%.
I'm the
focused.
legit, and that's what I've been doing all my life. And all of them said, it's funny. We always feel like you own it. And no agency will behave that way, because nobody works in an agency had his own business before, or at least in New York City. That becomes after they leave the agency, not while they're still. Exactly. So the entrepreneurial side, they felt it and they loved it. I was hiding it. And the third part, I went and I took course in sales because I wanted to know how to present an idea, and I closed the deal. And they all said, you know what, Amir, what's amazing? We never felt you were here to sell anything. You just believed in our idea and you wanted to help us to bring it to the next level. And sometimes you would fight and argue with us. So the three things I was trying to say, this is who I am, look at me, I'm the big branded guy in New York City, all that, what I was trying to pretend, they actually liked the opposite of it. And in that time, I realized what you're talking about. Bring myself out there. That's where the value is, not what I want to pretend to be.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of people, I mean, young and old, we tend to struggle with this concept of like who I am and being myself completely without having to worry that I need to be something else in order to make it work, especially with people starting their own businesses, especially with certain industries that are very much like clicky and very much closed, and having to feel like in order for me to penetrate that market or feel like I need to be able to make my work or be seen or be heard or for people to see who I really am as a brand, I need to change who I am as a brand. And I think one of the biggest lessons I learned over the years from my own struggles of like, which way is the right way to go is I think we are so uniquely who we are in ourselves. And I think the moment that we can accept that, love that, and then really thrive in that own space is the minute that you will actually be able to be bringing something that is very unique, authentic, and honest to the table. And I think the world, especially right now, is starving for that, this authenticity and this
Truth.
honestness. Yes.
Truth. I agree with what you're saying, 100,000,000%, especially if you don't have the education or the structure that comes with what you do. But I think if you have the education and the structure, that can support that in a way that you don't need to be that vulnerable in the mix because you have something else to put out there, or at least that's my belief. But when everything is self-taught and everything is your own truth, you can't package that. You just need to put that out there.
Out there. That's amazing. Is there someone in your life that you feel has influenced you the most into who you are now?
As professional or as personal
Both?
or as professionally, funny enough, in 2002, 2001, I always looked at Ian Schrager. Ian Schrager is the guy who founded the first boutique hotels ever. He's the one who came up he did the first one in New York. It was the Morgans, and then he did the Royalton, the Paramount.
What year?
I think he did them in the late 90s, early 2000, 2001.
Those are the first boutique hotels ever.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Ever
Okay.
came to life.
Oh.
The ideology. And it's funny, I remember Campus Magazine,
Mm.
if you
Yeah.
witnessed that. They did an interview with me at that time. And they said, who's the idol you're looking at in the business? And I said, it's Ian Schrager. He did Studio 54. He's the one who invented the disco culture. And then he shifted. He went to prison, actually, because of drugs in the club, blah, 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 blah. And I hope that's not where I'm inspired by him. But then he came out of prison and he invented the idea of the boutique hotel. And I was always fascinated with what he did, because when I went to his hotels at that time, it was a totally different experience. You walk in a hotel and suddenly there's no lobby. There is a club. Like he reinvented the whole game. So I said that in literally, I think maybe 99 or 2000. And 17 years later, I worked in his hotel
You're
to create
joking.
his hotel in New York City public.
What were you working as?
I did the creative concept and the experience of the hotel.
Oh my God, that must have been amazing for you.
Tears.
Yeah.
tears. Every time I go in the elevator for that meeting, I'm in tears.
Oh my God, I love it.
Tears.
Oh, that's
Really.
amazing. Did you share the story with him?
I did, but he didn't care.
Okay.
No, honestly, I think I said it in such a wrong context. Like it didn't feel like shut up, yeah.
Let's just
Fine.
get this
Like
done.
I've heard that many times. Move on. But I think it's a fascinating when you put something out there and it comes back, and that's basically what happened. On a personal level, I mean, I sound it's very cliche, like everyone says, but I think I was very lucky with my parents because they gave me the freedom of being, which is something I've not experienced with a lot of my friends and their parents. They, and I don't think they were even aware. It's who they are, and through their humbleness, through their quirkiness, through their own being, they gave me something I learned growing up, that they gave me a sense of freedom to be anything I want or to do anything, and never judged or never evaluated or even celebrated. Like whatever happened, as if it's normal. You know, like when I failed was like fine, and when I succeeded was like fine too. You know, so there was never that sense of let's put the flags up or let's save him from whatever he's going through. They were just very mellow in that sense. Yeah. And I think if anyone can give a gift to anyone, is that to a friend, to a parent, to a partner, to a lover, to whatever, is the ability to be free.
Freedom of being. That's beautiful. It's also very, very rare, I think. And I love that you say even with a friend, because I think even within the context of our friendships, oftentimes we are so set on that person that we became friends with that we don't give them the freedom to explore their own evolution, their own sense of identity. And we have ideas about who they are. And anytime they try to get outside of that or try something different, we kind of resist that those changes. And I think you're absolutely right. Like if the minute you can be with another human being and give them that space to just exist and be who they are, I think those are the most beautiful, most comfortable, most incredible relationships that really help each other thrive. And it's so beautiful that you had that with your parents.
Yeah. And I think the most challenging, honestly, in human relationships in general, people forget it's an exchange. You know, it's even with my business partners, even with my team, flow is important. You know, you should be open to receive and should be able to give. I should be open to receive. I should be capable of giving. Because it's very interesting. Some people are great givers, but they cannot receive.
Yeah.
And some people are receivers, but actually they cannot give.
Absolutely.
And I think that balance is very important if people keen.
Because all of life is an exchange, right? It's like a
Yeah.
give and take constantly. You're exchanging energy, you're exchanging things. It's always a give and take and a flow of that energy. And it can't be one way or the other. It always has to be a constant flow
You know,
between
even
both.
on a very basic level, I think the first time I remember that, I had a summer job in Emporio Armani in London. And they were giving us the body language, how we should stand, blah, blah, blah. And I remember very well. And I always share that because what people teaches you when you're young stays with you, especially when you're 17, when you're 18. And I remember that guy very well. He said, when people come in, smile. I said, sure. He said, no, don't say sure, because it's going to create an exchange. That exchange will be a smile back. And I still remember that story till now. It's an exchange.
It's a powerful lesson.
You initiate something and something happens.
Yeah.
If nothing happens, fine.
Yeah.
But you initiated the gesture, you initiated the energy of welcoming. You initiated something.
And it allows for something to then come back.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. It opens the door for something to come back.
Okay, I have a couple questions and then I promise this will be over. What is the quality in you that you feel defines you, the essence of who you are, that if it wasn't there, it just wouldn't be Amir?
I think there's something for people to say about me. I don't think it's something I'm capable to articulate. But what I think I can voice is my sense of being. And my sense of being is very simple. Simple. It's basically the word simple. In my mind, I think I have simple mind. Though people might say the opposite, but in my mind, it's the simple thought. It's the freedom of a thought. I think that's my sense of being, is the freedom of a thought. Because a thought, if it has the sense of freedom, it doesn't have a limit. Any thought you have in your mind, the only thing that stops it is you. Because it can even stay without even sharing it. You can be the one who block the thought or let it travel, let it go. So it can go anywhere. And I think that's, if it's any gift that I am aware of that I like to hold to, is that, is the sense of a free thought.
No, absolutely. But you feel that upon meeting you. Like upon being in your presence, you can feel that that's who you are. A very sort of honest, free, uninhibited, very compassionate being where you walk in and just your energy fills the space and is a very comfortable
Wow.
presence to be in.
Thank
So so you've nailed it actually. That is essentially who I felt who you were upon meeting you. And that first time at my Zone 69 when I saw you dancing about at the opening in the middle with all your friends, and even just now sitting with you, that's essentially what it feels like who you are. Okay, my last questions to you. What is it you feel like your life's purpose is? What do you want your legacy to be?
I would say is to create a feeling for people, to allow people to feel something. I think if I want ever to be remembered, that I made people feel something.
Amir, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation.
That brings tears to my eyes.
Thank you.